In the pages of history, there are figures who stand center stage, their actions and words forever etched into the collective memory of humanity. And then there are those who linger in the wings, present at pivotal moments, yet somehow absent from the narrative we tell ourselves about the past. Few figures embody this paradox more completely than Eva Braun, the woman who spent 16 years as Adolf Hitler's companion, yet remained virtually unknown to the German public until after her death. Born on February 6, 1912 in Munich, Germany, Eva Anna Paula Braun entered a world on the cusp of transformation. The daughter of Friedrich Fritz Braun, a school teacher, and Franziska Fanny Kronberger, Eva was the middle child of 3 sisters, growing up in a conventional Catholic household during unconventional times. Her early life offered few clues to the extraordinary path that lay ahead. A mediocre student with a passion for athletics, Eva showed an early interest in fashion and photography, innocent pursuits that would, by chance, lead her directly into the orbit of the man who would become history's most reviled dictator. In 1929, at just 17 years old, Eva Braun answered an advertisement for an assistant position at Heinrich Hoffmann's photography studio. Hoffmann wasn't just any photographer, he was Adolf Hitler's personal photographer and an early supporter of the Nazi movement. The studio was a regular haunt for Nazi party officials, and it was there, amid the flash bulbs and developing chemicals, that Eva Braun first encountered the man who would define her place in history. What's remarkable about their first meeting is how unremarkable it was. Hitler was already 40 years old, a rising political figure with a growing following. Eva was a teenager, naive and impressionable. Hoffmann later recounted that Hitler asked about the girl with the blue eyes, but there was no immediate romantic spark that anyone observed. It was simply the beginning of a slow gravitation. At the time of their meeting, Hitler was consumed with his political ambitions. The Nazi Party was gaining momentum in German politics, and Hitler was cultivating his image as a man wedded only to Germany, a man with no time for personal entanglements. This carefully constructed persona made no room for a public relationship, a fact that would define Eva Braun's life in the shadows for years to come. For Eva, Hitler represented something beyond politics. Coming from a middle-class background during economically turbulent times, the attention of such a powerful man, however limited or secretive, offered both excitement and security, but the path she was beginning to walk would prove precarious. Eva's diaries from this period reveal a young woman increasingly frustrated with Hitler's neglect. She wasn't interested in politics, she was interested in the affection and attention that Hitler repeatedly withheld. This led to 2 suicide attempts in the early years of their relationship, not so much out of deep despair, but as desperate bids for Hitler's attention, and remarkably, they worked. In 1932, Eva attempted suicide by shooting herself in the chest with her father's pistol. The bullet missed any vital organs. Less than a year later, she took an overdose of sleeping pills. These acts of desperation had their intended effect. Hitler became more attentive, eventually setting her up in an apartment in Munich. But the price was absolute secrecy. As Adolf Hitler ascended to the chancellorship of Germany in January 1933, Eva Braun remained hidden from public view. While Hitler presented himself as a celibate figure devoted only to the German people, Eva lived a peculiar half-life, materially comfortable but emotionally isolated, connected to the most powerful man in Germany, yet unable to claim any official status. By the mid-1930s, Eva had secured a position in Hitler's private life that few others would ever achieve. She became a regular presence at the Berghof, Hitler's mountain retreat near Berchtesgaden. It was here, away from the scrutiny of the German public, that Eva could at last take on something resembling the role of hostess and companion. She was always cheerful, always well dressed. Hitler would come alive somewhat in her presence, becoming less the Führer and more a man enjoying simple company. But there were rules. When official guests were present, Eva would disappear. When photographs were taken, she would step out of frame. She existed in a strange twilight, present yet perpetually absent. The private Eva Braun left behind a surprising visual record of these years. An enthusiastic amateur filmmaker, she captured countless hours of casual moments at the Berghof. Hitler relaxing with his dog, gatherings of Nazi officials in informal settings, Eva herself enjoying the privileges of her position. These images stand in stark contrast to the public face of the Third Reich. Here we see not the machinery of terror, but its architects at ease. This duality exemplifies the moral vacuum at the heart of Eva Braun's story. While millions suffered under Nazi rule, while Europe descended into war, and while the Holocaust began its gruesome unfolding, Eva Braun concerned herself with fashion, films, and maintaining her position in Hitler's affections. What's disturbing about Eva Braun is not what she did, for she had no official role and no direct involvement in Nazi atrocities, but what she apparently failed to see, or chose not to see. Her letters and diaries reveal a woman obsessed with the minutiae of her relationship, her appearance, her daily routines. There is an almost complete absence of political awareness or moral reflection, even as the world collapsed around her. Eva's relationship with Hitler's inner circle was complex. Joseph Goebbels, the Reich Minister of Propaganda, appeared to respect her influence with Hitler and cultivated a friendship. Others, like Hitler's architect and later armaments minister Albert Speer, recalled her as pleasant but inconsequential. Martin Bormann, Hitler's private secretary, reportedly viewed her with suspicion and resentment, seeing her presence as a threat to his control over access to the Führer. Within this circle, Eva found herself in an unusual position compared to other Nazi wives. Unlike Magda Goebbels, who embodied the Nazi ideal of motherhood and enjoyed public recognition as the unofficial First Lady of the Third Reich, Eva remained hidden, childless, and unacknowledged. Eva's existence contradicted Nazi ideology about women's roles. She wasn't a mother, she wasn't publicly standing behind her man. She smoked, wore modern fashions, exercised, and enjoyed sunbathing, hardly the traditional German woman that Nazi propaganda celebrated. This contradiction needed to remain hidden, which explains Hitler's insistence on keeping her out of public view. As the tide of war turned against Germany following the disastrous defeat at Stalingrad in early 1943, Eva's isolation only increased. Hitler spent less time at the Berghof consumed by military matters, yet rather than distance herself from a regime now clearly headed for destruction, Eva's loyalty only seemed to deepen. Following the failed assassination attempt against Hitler on July 20th, 1944, Eva wrote to Hitler expressing her relief and unwavering devotion. By this point, with Germany bombing allies, her choice to remain linked to Hitler represented more than naive love. It was a deliberate decision to align herself with his fate, whatever it might be. As Soviet forces closed in on Berlin in April 1945, Eva Braun made the most consequent choice of her life. Rather than remain in the relative safety of Bavaria, she traveled to Berlin, descending into Hitler's bunker beneath the Reich Chancellery, a journey from which she knew she would not return. She arrived in Berlin like a bride, bringing trunks of fashionable clothes, champagne, her makeup, and perfumes. There was something almost theatrical about it, as though she were finally stepping onto the stage after years in the wings. In those final days, she was calm, supportive of Hitler, and determined to see her role through to its inevitable conclusion. In the bunker, amid the collapse of the Third Reich, Eva Braun finally received the legitimacy she had long been denied. On April 29, 1945, in a brief civil ceremony, she married Adolf Hitler, becoming for less than 40 hours Eva Hitler. The wedding celebration was a surreal affair. As Soviet shells fell on Berlin above them, Eva Braun, now Eva Hitler, hosted a small reception with champagne. Witnesses recalled her apparent happiness, her satisfaction at finally achieving official recognition as Hitler's wife. The next day, on April 30th, after Hitler had composed his political testament, the newly married couple retired to their private quarters. There, Eva bit into a cyanide capsule while Hitler shot himself. Following Hitler's explicit instructions, their bodies were carried to the garden above the bunker, doused in petrol, and burned. It was an orchestrated final act, one that Eva embraced willingly, even eagerly. In choosing to die with Hitler, Eva Braun made her most public statement. After years of invisibility, her death alongside Hitler ensured she would be forever linked with him in history. Whether this was an act of love, of complicity, or simply the final step in a journey from which there was no return, remains a question for historians and psychologists alike. In the aftermath of the war, as the full horrors of the Nazi regime came to light, Eva Braun remained an enigma. Unlike the wives of other Nazi leaders who faced questioning, imprisonment, or public scorn, Eva's suicide spared her from confronting the consequences of her association with history's most destructive regime. How should history judge Eva Braun? Was she, as some suggest, a political innocent, a woman in love who remained willfully blind to the crimes committed in Hitler's name? Or was her very presence, her normalization of Hitler's private private life, her apparent lack of moral concern, a form of complicity that deserves its own reckoning. Eva Braun forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about responsibility in the face of evil. She wasn't a perpetrator in any direct sense. She had no political power, no official role, and yet her willingness to share Hitler's life and ultimately his death, her apparent moral blindness to what the man she loved represented, implicates her in ways that are both subtle and profound. Perhaps Eva Braun's significance lies in what she represents: the capacity for ordinary human emotions, love, loyalty, desire for recognition, to exist alongside and even enable extraordinary evil. Her story reminds us that history's darkest chapters aren't written solely by monsters, but by human beings whose choices, or refusal to make choices, allow monstrosity to flourish. In the end, Eva Braun remains what she was throughout her relationship with Hitler, a figure on the margins of history, yet intimately connected to its darkest hours. Her life offers no grand lessons, no heroism, no unique villainy, only the disturbing reminder that even in the shadow of unimaginable horror, people continued to love, to hope, to seek happiness without asking the questions that might have shattered the illusory normality they had created for themselves.